Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Jetzt kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von Inzo an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Hey guys, welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. I'm here joined by Joey, our usual host, and also Teddy from Stuttgart. And yeah, we have a lot of topics to talk about. We had a great game this past weekend, Borussia Dortmund 3, Stuttgart also 3, a draw, a lot of late drama in the Signal Iduna Park. We have a lot of things to talk about, and we would love to hear all the perspective from the Stuttgart side, from Ted, of course. But I think let's just do some introductions first. Joey, my friend, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. A bit tired, but getting everything. I guess you could say preparation has started for Thanksgiving because we are hosting this year, and that's a first for us. So it's it should be an exciting time. Lots of food.
That's good. No, you're going to be a great host. Are you going to cook during Christmas, or who's going to be?
Yeah, my fiance and I are both gonna cook, but she's gonna do the turkey, and I'm gonna make the mashed potatoes and plenty of sides to go around. Mac and cheese, some
Nice.
veggies.
Nice. I'm hungry now. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
But
I got you.
yeah, but anyways, let's go with Teddy. How are you doing tonight? And I think I'm just gonna start right off with your general thoughts about the match. What did you guys think about the draw at the Signal Iduna Park? A lot of late drama, but yeah, what's up, Teddy?
Yeah, seriously. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be back on the show. For those who haven't listened to me before, I'm on the VfB Americana podcast with Travis and Matt. Happy to be here with you guys tonight. Yeah, I mean, from a Stuttgart perspective, hard to argue with. That was like. This was one. I mean, a tie can feel either like a 3-pointer. Like you've got a win out of it, or it can feel like you've taken a loss home from it. And for us, from the Stuttgart perspective, what we talked about on the pod last night was this was a tie that felt like a win for sure. After the Adeyemi late goal, it seemed like the curse might finally have broken for you guys, and we were going to go home losers, which would have been disappointing, but we were very much happy with the 3-3 draw. And I think, it's one of those from the perspective of a neutral, that was an awesome game.
Yeah, no, true. And yeah, I was gonna ask for Joey right now because I had a different perspective of the match, to be honest. Because watching the match as a Borussia Dortmund fan, even though we were most of that match leading the game and not in any instance behind the scoreboard, I really thought Stuttgart had the upper hand. I think we're just too used to not controlling games at all, and I thought Stuttgart controlled the match really well. Didn't finish all their chances in the best way possible, but still overall, I felt as a fan that Dortmund, like even though we were playing at the Signal Iduna Park, it kind of looked like at the same time Stuttgart was playing at home because they felt so comfortable in possession and just controlling the match, and Dortmund didn't have much to happening until the first penalty, which led to the first goal, and we're gonna talk about that as well. But yeah, I think that's really my perspective. I of course I'm disappointed because we were in the lead twice by a great margin, a 2-0 lead in the beginning in the first half. But yeah, I just thought Stuttgart were overall better than us in this match, and I think we were just managed to score the goals that we needed to in the right moments. But yeah, what about you, Joey? What was your perspective and general thoughts of the match before we just dive into a more deeper analysis?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this was a really frustrating match from Dortmund perspective. I mean, being up 2-0 at halftime, and then dropping that lead, getting the lead again, and then once again dropping points late. I mean, it, this is sort of a bad trend right now. This like conceded goal in stoppage time. But I will say overall, I do think a 3-3 is pretty fair. I think a draw is fair. Um, I mean, Deniz Undav's 3 goals, kudos to him. Those were really impressive. I mean, there's like those single touch goals, and then that third one was just really cheeky between Schlotterbeck's legs, the heartbreaker, I guess you could call it. I do think that Stuttgart looked like the stronger side for much of the first half, and then once Dortmund scored that first goal, um, we kind of took control and had a bit of momentum. And I do think there was a stage where I was really hoping we were going to get a third goal before halftime. Didn't happen, and I really don't think that Niko Kovač managed this game well enough in the second half, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I do think that that cost Dortmund in a way. But you know, Stuttgart is a tough opponent, and from a Dortmund perspective, this is a team that has consistently beaten us, or at least made life difficult for us in the last few years. And or I guess ironically, um, Girassi and Anton can't seem to beat their former club. So, like, I do find that a little bit funny, but I do think 3-3 is fair, but it's frustrating to me the way that the 3-3 ended up happening.
No, yeah, that's true. Of course, as a BB fan, I'm also frustrated. But yeah, let's dive into some analysis, shall we? I have some general stats here from SofaScore just for us to have an overall picture of what the match is. Of course, there is a context within this match and beyond the stats, but just as a reference, Stuttgart won in terms of possession 54-46. XG generated by Dortmund 2.99 and Stuttgart 1.55, and 5 big chances created from 14 shots from Dortmund, and 2 big chances created for Stuttgart from 16 shots on target. And I think those stats give us some good references. But I was really like in the first half, I thought the stats, especially with Dortmund's expected goals, was a little bit misleading because even though we had 2.27 expected goals in the first half, I thought it was a little bit misleading because within the context of that match in the first half, on specifically, I thought that Borussia Dortmund did not have control of the match, did not hurt uh, Stuttgart that much until we found the first goal on that controversial penalty. And I think if you think of those expected goals that XG generated only by that chance from Girassi and then the rebound to Maxi Bayer, which was a highly scoring chance for Maxi, and then another lucky on Bayer's side to get that ball deflected and then to score just by himself. I think there's enough XG only on that specific framing of what, not even 20 seconds. So I think it's a little bit misleading of how Dortmund did not control the first half. I think Stuttgart had the upper hand in terms of control and possession and creating the spaces, but we're struggling to shooting and finding the right chances to score. What do you think about that, Teddy? About this Stuttgart having the possession but struggling to find those high XG chances?
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, reading between the numbers and really astute analysis. I guess we say what a penalty is like zero point 0.7 of a goal. And I guess if you've got Emre Can stepping up to take it, it's probably more like 0.8, 0.9 with his track record in the Bundesliga from the spot. And then that Maxi Bayer chance, that's interesting. That's a good point that with those saves, that probably balloons it up a little bit. I did think Stuttgart really did look in control and very comfortable the first 25 minutes of the match. And that was something like I felt like I noticed it from a biased perspective anyway, just walking out of the tunnel, looking at the players' demeanors and things. Like the Stuttgart players looked loose. The Dortmund players, to me, looked a little bit tight. Part of that, I'm sure, when you're playing at home in front of 82,000 fans, against a bogey team and you're in a rough run of form, that's natural. But I was surprised at how loose some of the young Stuttgart players looked. Kema Andres, I don't think had the best match for Stuttgart, but he was like smiling and jovial in the tunnel and didn't look like the moment was too big for him, which I thought was awesome. But yeah, we looked very much in the game, in control, comfortable in possession the first 25 minutes, aside from the Thiago Tomas chance in the first 10 minutes where he put it just wide to the right. We just didn't really create much opportunity, though. And then I think it really just all swung once Dortmund got that first goal. The chance was for the floodgates to open a little bit, and it seemed like Stuttgart kind of hanging on for dear life until halftime. at that point. Yeah, I know we'll get to the penalty. That definitely swung things a bit. But it's interesting from the XG perspective. For us 2 years ago with Girassi, he was like incapable of missing the mark with Stuttgart. The guys, it was insane, his conversion rate the first half of the season 2 years ago. And then he tapered off a little bit, but he still, I think, finished the season with 28 goals, I want to say, in the league, something along those lines. So it's really interesting to see kind of the change in fortune there with his form right now with Dortmund. And then Deniz Undav is a guy who is just now rounding into form for us at kind of the perfect time. He was out with injury quite a bit this season, and then came back and had a really rough first few games, and missed a lot of chances wide, high, not handsome, and now seems like he's kind of back in form.
Yeah, that's a interesting perspective, Teddy. And yeah, Joey, what do you think about that? About not only about Stuttgart, but about also Dortmund on how did you think that things play out in the first half? Do you think Stuttgart had a control? We had a control. How are you feeling with Dortmund and those stats? Like, does it tell the whole story of the match?
I mean, I do think that is really, it is interesting to think about how much of the XG is just the penalty chance, and then Girassi's shot that was on target, the follow up by Maxi, which was also on target, and the follow up again, which was the goal. That absolutely pads the XG. And I mean, those are three shots on target in quick succession, as you mentioned, that I mean, that's probably over one XG right there. I was actually pretty surprised that we went into halftime with the lead, given the lineup. I mean, one of my first thoughts when I looked at the lineup was, ah, man, this is we're preparing the team for a draw or a loss. The this Girassi up front hasn't quite been working recently. I thought that Chukwuemeka and Brandt on together was kind of an interesting experiment. And I mean, Emre Can has been decent since he's been back, but he's only been back a couple of games. And I am certainly not feeling as comfortable with him as the central defender of the back three when Nico Schlotterbeck has been playing that role. I suppose the alternative is not playing Emre Can and having Anselmino on, because I think Rami Bensebaini's injured or had picked up a knock, something like that. Um, and I don't know, the midfield has been really shaky recently, and I don't think Niko Kovač has really figured out who the best pair of midfielders are. I mean, Felix Mecha has had some really good matches this season, but he's also had some really bad ones. Job is kind of the same. He's had a couple of stinkers, but he's also showed some real class. And I mean, I thought that Job was one of our better players against Stuttgart. But then, Pascal Gross is really good on the ball, but he doesn't really have pace anymore. And I mean, given how this team has been performing the last several matches, I'm just not understanding. I guess the two things I'm not understanding are, um, first, why we're not going back to a front two. I mean, that was working. That, like, Niko Kovač that's kind of one of his specialties as a manager. And I mean, we saw with the third goal that we were all, at least the Dortmund fans, were hoping was going to be the winner. That Maxi Bayer and Karim Adeyemi can make a very strong pair up front. And this is another match where Maxi Bayer's being played kind of like a pseudo wing back, and it just doesn't really make sense to me when his preferred position is the number nine, and the guy is still able to score. So, I mean, some of this is just a bit confusing to me as a fan. And then the other aspect that I was really disappointed by was the lack of substitutions and how long Kovac waited to use substitutions. Because I think, I mean, a player like Carney Chukwuemeka, he had a decent game, but past the 55th or 60th minute, he was just gassed. And I mean, you could see it in sluggish passes, not able to really run and keep up. And I mean, I'm not trying to say anything against the player, but he's someone that we know is not generally fit enough for 90 minutes. So why not make that sub 10 minutes sooner? And a player like Karim Adeyemi brings a lot of pace against a team that most of the players have been playing a while. So bringing on someone who can sprint like Adeyemi in theory can try to break that defense. But Kovac waited until it was 2-2, and then we brought on Adeyemi, and I really think that the momentum could have shifted and, in a way, maybe prevented that second goal from happening in the first place. But again, I am just speculating, and the main takeaway here is I looked at the lineup, and I didn't think that we were set up to win this match.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective. And just before we go into the penalty, I what I'm gonna say is that I think Maxi as a wingback, uh, I'm not gonna say I'm for it, but I kind of understood what he wanted to do with it, like stretching the field, and like Maxi is a good runner. He's good
He is.
tactically speaking. He defends well. He defended well against I forgot who Stuttgart's right back name was right now, but
Asignon.
yeah, he had Massignon. Yes, thank you. He had some interesting characteristics for the role, and I really thought. I think our formation is not really what worries me. It's how we behave, especially out of possessions, especially staying between the mid and to a low block and allowing Stuttgart to have the possession. And our press didn't really work out that much against Stuttgart, so that's why I thought we are too passive, especially in the first half. In my opinion, I think Stuttgart looked like they were playing at home because of that. And Maxi was a little bit between those roles. He was trying to fill that role as a left wing back defensively, which Svenso and Benzebaini did in other occasions. And at the same time, when we got the counters, I thought he was really effective in terms of just making those runs, stretching the pitch, and having some one-on-ones against Assignon. Of course, we know Maxi is not the best dribbler in the world. I think he had some interesting take-ons and interesting shots, but he's not really that guy to be one-on-one against pacey defender as Asian is. So he wasn't that successful offensively in those duels against Stuttgart. So I can understand why Kovac set him up like that just to stretch the pitch in possession and allow to have those one-on-ones, but he's not really the player for to win those duels or to win most of those duels. So that's what worried me, and also the passive posture we have during the first half. But let's go to the penalty. I think for me, it's not really a debate. But Teddy, what did you think of the penalty? What were you feeling when the referee just signaled to the penalty against Stuttgart?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your guys' take on this one. I'm not so like I'm not super butthurt about it. I don't think it was a PK, but it's like that's a 50-50. That's given half the time, not given half the time. I think it's one of those that really comes down to what was the call on the field before they go to the video review. And I think it's one of those you see a guy go down in the box suddenly like that, like the instinct is to call it. I think it's somewhat fair, not somewhat unfair. I do think when I watched it more slow motion, it looks to me like that both players are looking at the ball. I don't think Deniz Undav had any intent to take Schlotterbeck down. I think it's just happened to collide in the box. So yeah. Am I disappointed that it was given? Yeah, I think it changed the momentum of the match. But I think it's fair enough. It was funny because we had one when we played Augsburg is where Kevin Schlotterbeck plays, right? I think. And Kevin Schlotterbeck had a takedown of Dan Axel Zagadou, an old friend of Dortmund, in the box. And that was like the Augsburg players were totally up in arms, and it was a similar sort of circumstance. Like he, granted, had his arms around Zagadou, so there's a bit more of an argument there, but like totally a 50-50, could have gone either way. And one set of fans would have been disappointed, the other set of fans would have felt justified. So I am just treating it like Revenge of the Schlotterbecks, and all is now even in the universe.
That's an interesting take, man. And I think for me, just before Joey gives his take on the penalty, for me, that's not a pen. Like, for me, simple as that. I think there's a debate because that's not really shoulder to shoulder. It was really Undav shoulder on Schlotterbeck's back. Uh, so was in that I think that's mainly why the VAR didn't call it, because they saw the contact behind Schlotterbeck and judged it was enough to call it a penalty. But in my honest opinion, I don't think you can give like a penalty or a foul in every contact like that. I didn't think it was like that strong enough to Nico to drop to the ground and the referee to call the pen. I think Nico really called for the contact, and when he felt it, he kind of like just forced his movement to the ground a little bit. Not saying he dived or anything like that, but he just tried to win the penalty that way, and it worked. But honestly, I don't think it's a penalty. I think that's a little bit too soft for you to call it. And I thought it was really weird. It's kind of rare for referees in the Bundesliga to call those kind of like penalties, like actual penalty. But yeah, for me, that's not a pen. I think Stuttgart was affected negatively by the ref. But yeah, it helped us. But I don't really think it was a pen for me. I think like there's a debate about it, but for me, that's too soft to be called a penalty, man. Yeah, and yeah, what about you, Joey?
So I mean, I actually think that the penalty hurt Dortmund in the end because it gave Deniz Undav the worst kind of motivation to go on and score 3 goals. You know, maybe
It was
some of
our
the
fault.
listeners, maybe some of the listeners will relate to my perspective on this because watching this, I kept watching the replays and I was like, where is it? Where is it? And then I'm trying to follow the right players because it is, things are moving quickly. There's a bunch of players in the box, and I mean, they showed a few different angles. You can see the players come together, but for me, there wasn't any like vantage point that they gave on on the television, at least through ESPN Plus, that um, I, I didn't see the clear penalty. That doesn't mean there wasn't one, and I mean I kind of deferred to VAR on that one because I was watching and I wasn't, there's not like a cleat to the leg or a blatant pull on a jersey. Um, so I'm kind of like what Ted said. I think that one's 50-50. I think half the time it gets called, the other half it doesn't. And in that kind of situation, VAR does look. And I mean, if the determination is it has to be a clear and obvious error to overturn, then if they're, they have to make the case that it's a clear and obvious error. And if there is some contact, then that is going to kind of go to the on-field call standing. So I think, I mean, I'm a Dortmund fan, so happy we got the call, but it, I don't know how much of a protest there would have been if it hadn't been called. You know, maybe the ball gets cleared or scooped up by the keeper and Schlotterbeck yells and then it's done. But um, I don't have a huge case to make one way or the other for it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't really think it's a pen. Like, I was watching even the Brazilian broadcast, and everyone said it was not a penalty. And like here in the Brazilian league, like it's really common for any contact for them to give a penalty for the slightest that the contact is. And I think most of the argument for the that to be called a penalty is where the contact happened, like behind Schlotterbeck. So that's not really shoulder to shoulder, but usually in the Bundesliga, like, and I prefer that style of refereeing, not giving any contact a penalty. I think there's a circumstance for those different situations. And for me, in that situation, I don't think it should have been called. Happy for Dortmund that it was called, but yeah, that really changed the momentum because I really thought Stuttgart had the upper hand, and we just found the penalty, and suddenly Stuttgart felt it a little bit at that moment. What do you think, Ted? That do you think that us opening the score really affected Stuttgart, and like how it has been like that journey for you guys, like to being like the opponent scoring first, and you guys having to go back on the disadvantage?
Yeah, this is what we talk about a lot as Stuttgart fans. Is this is a team that for the last several years has not quit in matches. They've gone behind, they've come back, they've had some big and very consequential wins and ties like that. I mean, the late win against Cologne to stay up 3 years ago is the biggest one that sticks out in my mind. But the team kind of has a track record for going behind and sticking around in matches in many cases. So, but that said, I was definitely worried when Dortmund netted the opener, and I felt like it did pretty quickly change the way that the game was playing out. It felt to me like it was like Stuttgart just needed to get into the locker room for halftime and sit down as a team and regroup. And the longer that the first half wore on, I think it was all advantage Dortmund at that point after the PK and especially after the Bayer goal. I thought Bayer had a great match, dangerous guy. Like I'm with you. I mean, I watch Dortmund twice a year, and then occasionally in the Champions League when they're playing. But I was thinking back, I'm like, don't I remember Maxi Bayer was always a striker at Hoffenheim? What the hell is he doing on the left-hand side? So definitely out of position, but like, I thought he had a great match. I thought he was super dangerous when he, when he netted that, it was kind of control or disconnect from Finn Jelsch and the back line. Like the dude just fell asleep on that and got caught ball watching. And I was certainly worried that it could have been 3-0 before halftime. Glad it wasn't.
Yeah, and I think for you guys, what helped a lot in the beginning of the second half, it was that scrappy goal from Undav. And I wanted really to talk about with Joey right now because, in my opinion, man, what the hell just happened? Like, because I wasn't even expecting. I was watching on my phone. I was getting ready for some other things, and I just left my phone there while I was doing something else. And when I saw, like, I just saw like a cross, which I thought was going beyond, behind Undav. And I thought, okay, that's gonna be just uh, our ball. It's gonna be okay. And then Undav just pulls off like some trickery, and we concede. Just Emre Can just stays there, like not doing anything. Like the John Travolta meme. Like, what am I doing here? Kobo doesn't go for the ball, and I honestly think it's a little bit 50-50 to blame on that because I thought that kind of in those kind of moments, I think Kobo should go for the ball because he has that clear advantage and he's a tall keeper. But at the same time, I thought Emerson was a little bit too passive on that play, and I wanted to have our take on that first goal because that really pissed me off and really just put Stuttgart back in the game, man.
I mean, all of Undav's goals were like a little bit ridiculous in one way or another. I have to admit, and I mean, I did mention earlier I'm not the biggest fan of Emre Can as the central defender of the back three, and that's one of the reasons why I think he can sometimes fall asleep a little bit. And I mean, we Undav's finish was really nice, but the defender there should not allow the ball to reach Undav's foot from that position. And I mean, I can't really, yeah, I can't defend Emre Can on that one. And I think on the third goal, on Stuttgart's third goal, Undav's third goal, I mean, that one's tough too because I think from Undav's position and Kobel's position, it's either shoot, going up toward the right corner, or dribble around Schlotterbeck and go for the left. And the easier shot is clearly to go for the right corner, and somehow Undav does neither of those and goes between Schlotterbeck's legs. And I think that, I mean, he was getting ready to go one way, and the ball just went straight through the other way. So it just left him there in the same John Travolta pose of like, what am I doing? What just happened? And I mean, I think the whole team fell asleep there for a moment, thinking that Adeyemi had just netted the winner. And I'm like, this is Borussia Dortmund. Like, guys, come on. In Dortmund, the match is never over until the final whistle because they're just a very unpredictable team. And until they start doing things like this, then it becomes very predictable. Anyway, those are my general thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's crazy, man. I think it all happened so fast, and for me, like when I was watching, and I think right in the beginning of the second half, I felt it, and just by like looking at it, like the eye test told me, or at least was telling me that it was gonna be a tough second half because like it kind of like had the same vibe of the first half with Stuttgart with all the momentum, trying to create chances involving Dortmund well enough, but struggling to conclude. But at the same time, Dortmund was too passive, and the first goal really just make the things really nervy for us. And we know Dortmund is a whole journey, is a whole experiment. The game is never over when no, sorry, the game is over only when it's over because between like in between that, a lot of things can happen. And yeah, it was just crazy how things happen. And Stuttgart, for me, they always looked in control and always like with that really grasp for taking advantage on Dortmund's like shakiness in those kind of moments. Like recently, speaking of the recent history of Borussia Dortmund, unfortunately. But yeah, I think I want to talk about a little bit more about Deniz Undav with Teddy because he had a hell of a match. And yeah, you guys, of course, lost Niko Voltemada to Newcastle in the summer transfer window. And the options in the Stuttgart front line are a little bit limited, in my opinion. I think you guys have some good players there. I like El Canuz. I think he's a really uh, great perspective for you guys. I really like Undav as well, but we now need Voltemata there. And with Fury in the bank, I didn't really understand why Sebastian Hoeneß didn't bring him sooner because you guys really needed that his sharpness and unpredictability in the attack. So yeah, well, what do you think of Undav's match overall, and what does like he mean to you guys after Votamata left, and yeah, why didn't Fury came earlier?
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of years for as a Stuttgart fan as far as attacking options have gone, because obviously Seru Guirassy has this incredible season 2 seasons ago, and then with a very inexpensive release clause is gone, and so we're back to the drawing board. We get Nick Voltemata somehow on a free transfer from Werder Bremen, and he's meant to be kind of the developmental guy. We spend basically 30 million euros a piece on Ermedin Demirovic and locking up and bringing back Deniz Undav on a permanent deal. And the expectation is that those guys are going to be the everyday starters. And, between Dennis's injuries and lack of form and Demirovic just having kind of an up and down season, it all ended up falling to Voltemata. And somehow, we just always kept wondering, like, is he going to fall back to earth? Like, is this trajectory really sustainable? Is this guy legit, or is he just like, is he having an amazing start to life as a starter in the Bundesliga? And this is not the reality of who he really is. I think he's surprised a lot of people. I'm amazed at how well he adapted to the Premier League too. Never thought I would have any interest in watching Newcastle matches, but I still love to see that guy. It's good to see him carving out a spot in the national team. Definitely miss him, but it's hard to say no to 75 million euros when you get a guy on a free within 12 months of that. So, that's understandable. And then missing him, really, we were super thin at striker to start the season. Essentially, in August, it was him and Ermedin Demirovic. Demirovic had a good start to the season and then showed up one match a few weeks ago in a walking boot and was out of the starting lineup. And Dennis was still injured too. So we were, for all intents and purposes, without a true striker for 2 weeks, I think. And it was down to like the very late additions that we got at the 11th hour of the transfer window in El Canus and Bilal why am I blanking on his name? But Buonanni. So really kind of those two guys, neither of whom is a true striker. And then labeling Furyk as wingers. And then Thiago Tomas, who we got back from Wolfsburg for 13 million euros, doing his second tour of duty with Stuttgart. He was a guy like, when that transfer came through, our sense was kind of this, this is not the striker that we need or necessarily want. But I think with the striker market this summer and how much guys like Patrick Schick were going for, Gyökeres, Voltemata, it's amazing that we picked up a Bundesliga capable striker for 13 million. So that was money well spent. He's been a great addition back to the club. But that, all that to say, incredibly important with all the injuries and how thin we are at the striker position, that Undav is back in form. And he's just a guy, like, I think if he doesn't play for your team, you saw it after the third goal, like, he's a shithouser. Like he eggs on the crowd. He celebrates. But for us, it's like, when he scored the second goal, he walks immediately to the Auswärts block and, points to the crest on his shirt. And 2 weeks ago, I think it was, El Canus scored the winner for us, and he took off his jersey and pointed at his own name on the back. And we're like, okay. So it's kind of a tale of two different sorts of players. So Deniz Undav means the world to this fan base. We love the guy. He's a hell of a lot of fun to watch. Whether or not he's scoring goals, he's always giving it his all. So it's awesome to see him have a day like he did on Saturday. I can't remember the last time I saw a kicker give out a 1 grade, like incredibly rare, and especially a 1 to a guy who gave away a PK to the other team. Kind of unheard of. So I think that just speaks to the quality of game that he had.
Yeah, he was really the character for that match particularly. And yeah, I think it's good that we can talk a little bit about the right end of the match with the late subs. And I think you can also add up Ted about Furyk and the impact that he had on this match that I was also referring to earlier. And I was after that I want Joey to take the lead and talk about like that late equalizer by Deniz Undav. Like, okay, the second goal was like a scrappy, like was just a mess. Like we couldn't defend the set piece at all, and Undav was just completely on the free. And I was already kind of expecting that at that moment in time. But yeah, I wanted to Ted to talk about like the impact of Furyk in this match. And right after that, Joe, you can talk about our Dortmund's like equalizer, which is kind of like the perfect picture of a match we had against Stuttgart at that arena like a few years back. That 3-3, Mukoko scoring the lead goal, and then we conceded a goal like 2 minutes after that.
Yeah,
like,
Silas.
I had this crazy deja vu feeling, and yeah, let's just start with Ted. What did you think about Furyk, man?
Furyk was so you guys are not the only fan base that behind the scenes is twiddling away with your thumbs on Discord, pissed off at your coach that he's too late on substitutions. We were all saying the same thing. We're like, why the hell is Furyk not on the pitch yet? This dude would be change of pace late in the game. We refer to him kind of as an agent of chaos. Like he comes in, he shakes things up there on the left wing, and you know exactly what he's going to do. He's a poor man's Arjen Robben. He's going to cut it in from the left-hand side, take it towards goal, and usually take a shot. Sometimes it's a wildly errant shot. Other times it's a beautiful goal. And in this case, he had the layoff to Dennis to create that third goal. But I think so much of that is down to Furyk when he came into the match. And he's a dude like, man, he's had a tough run of form this season. Went from last season getting called up into the national team and playing some of the qualifiers and friendlies and some of the Nations League matches to essentially getting played out of the starting lineup this season at Stuttgart, and us wondering if he even had a place in the team. He's one of the highest paid players on the team. So, Stuttgart doesn't have the resources, certainly, and the Schwabian mentality is not to pay money for nothing. We're all cheap asses. So, they're not going to let a guy stick around at those high of wages and not contribute. So it's been he's rounding into form of late and really regaining what he was able to do in previous seasons. And it's just interesting to see it happening as kind of a super sub role. But with playing in 3 competitions still, he'll get his minutes, in the Cup, in Europa League. But cool for him. I'm sure very meaningful to come back into Dortmund and have that impact in the match. He's certainly not a starting quality player on your squad by any means either. But it's cool to see him contributing meaningful minutes.
Nah, unfortunately, he had a great match for us Borussia fans. It was not a good day, but yeah, I wanted to talk to Joey now. I think we can talk about those last few minutes of the match where everything happened at once. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Karim Adeyemi because I thought he had a great impact on this match. He had a few great runs, and I mean, I understand the whole situation with his personal life and what's been happening behind the stages. We're not gonna dive deep into that right now, but I think we all Borussia fans we know the situation. I believe Ted also probably knows a lot about that situation with Karim and his personal issues, but yeah, I thought he had a great impact in the match with those runs. I think him and Nico are still, in my opinion, the best players we have in the squad. And I don't understand, like, beyond the personal issues, why Karim is not a constant starter on this team because we really need him, and especially in those kind of moments. And yeah, I wanted to talk to Joey also about Niko Kovač and why did it take that long to put such a decisive player as Karim Adeyemi on that match. And did you think that cost us the match, or like what was
I
your take on
I
those
think that
last few minutes?
yeah, I mean you asked me a question that I've been sort of racking my brain over the last I don't know 48 hours trying to think of like why didn't Kareem come on sooner? And I mean I think that the majority of the second half I was felt like waiting for the substitutes. And I mean it was great that Daniel Svensson came on, but we needed somebody like Kareem, and he did exactly what we thought he was going to do, which was create a lot of pace and shift the momentum. And here's sort of my take on why Kovac waited so long. It was 2-0 at halftime, and Kovac decided we're going to play for 2-0. And then at 2-1, he decided, nope, that was a good goal, but it was a fluke. We're going to play for 2-1. And then once it's 2-2, well, we have to play for 3-2 at that point. And then Kareem comes on, gets a goal. Um, but I think, I mean, we could have really used him 15 minutes earlier. And I mean, I think a player like that who can really shift the momentum, a player with that kind of agility coming in late game. I mean, I think that's one of the really positive features about Kareem Adeyemi as a substitute as opposed to a starter is that he has such agility, and when he's going against defenders who've already been playing for 60 minutes, he can break through, and we saw that even against Stuttgart. I mean, he had a couple good chances, and one of those he converted. But if Kareem had come in, let's say at the 55th minute, at the 60th minute, and I mean we could have potentially broken Stuttgart's momentum and hopefully gotten that third goal before they got the second, and that can be a different kind of psychological blow. Um, but I mean I'm just kind of speculating, but I do think that um, Kovac waiting on the substitutes was a major problem with this second half, in my opinion. And it's not just Adeyemi. Also, I do think that Guirassy needed to come off at some point, and it they keep saying that Guirassy's fighting through an injury. They keep backing him. He's gonna get his form back. And I mean, he did score the one goal that was a tight offside that VAR pulled back, and he did have a good shot on target that led to Maxi Bayer's goal. But at some point we have to ask, like, Is Fabio Silva going to get more than 3 minutes to make an appearance? And if Girassi is fighting through an injury of some kind, then why not take him out at the 70th minute when we have Champions League in 3 days and send Fabio Silva out there? Because, post 60th minute, I didn't think there was any chance Girassi was going to score. So why not throw out a more unpredictable player, someone who might be able to switch things up, and we have five substitutes, so like we can use them. Um, I really think that Kovac messed up his substitutions and not messed them up, but the timing of them, at least. I'll say the timing of the substitutions could have been much better or much more impactful.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of used to it at this point because he always waits too long to make the substitutions, and he's always too hierarchical about it. Like it's always one player for the other, same position. Like the guys cannot invert to different positions. They cannot position themselves in different setups. Tactically speaking, that's the whole like story as a fan of a club with Niko Kovač as your manager. But yeah, I think overall for us to uh, finish the debate overall on the match and just start going to some post match quotes here, which I think are really interesting, is that I think overall it was really fair. The result on itself, especially because I think Dortmund really took advantage on those high XG opportunities and playing that transitional style that's so characteristic of Niko Kovac, which come to a downside because it allows other teams, even at our own home ground, to dominate and create chances. And I think overall the result was fair for that because Dortmund could score the goals that need to be scored, especially being at home. And Stuttgart played great football. They were not afraid of Borussia Dortmund. They dominated possession for most of the match. They have good players to create better chances, but struggle to find those high quality chances that we were talking about earlier. So overall, I think it was a fair result because of that. You guys know that from the past episodes that I'm not the biggest Niko Kovac fan. Like I think he's a good floor raiser for us, but I think we are beyond that. And I'm way more excited by a guy like Sebastian Hoeneß who dares to do different things and dares to play the team with the possession and sets up the team really nicely with the possession. And that's something that Dortmund has been struggling all season. We have been struggling with subs all season to find the right midfield partnership, as Joey alluded to a few minutes back. So yeah, it's just frustrating. Another match against a top five team in the league, and we just could not convert that into 3 points, especially at home. So it's just frustrating, and it tells a lot about uh, Niko Kovac's lack of courage as a manager, in my opinion. But I think we can go to some post-match quotes now. I'm gonna go with Maxi Bayer here. He said after the match, "Yes, it sucks. We scored in the 90th minute, and then we concede the equalizer in the 90th minute. The mood is at rock bottom right now. Sorry." And then Niko Kovac, right after that, after hearing Maxi's quote, he said, "At the start of the season, he said we wanted to be champions, and now we are at rock bottom. We don't always have to believe everything the lad says. He probably had too much lactate in his body, and then it doesn't work quite right. Like I think like his mind. I think that's what he meant, and the translation might be a little bit off. But yeah, like what are you guys' opinion about those two different perspectives and like Kovac just basically calling out on Max Bayer on that quote? Like I'm gonna start with Joey on that one.
I mean, Bayer's young and he's emotional, and I mean, I can appreciate that. Um, I'm sure that it wasn't a loss, and we have to remember we did still get a point out of this. But when you, I see, I almost even said lose. When you draw in this manner, where a player who's been out, I mean, I think Maxi played the full 90, but a player who's been out there the whole match and has scored, has assisted, has been in the lead for most of the match, retook the lead. it is really devastating, I think. So I can understand where Maxi's coming from. And I also just appreciate that he's emotional, and I think the emotion can do a lot for motivating, just for the match overall. And Niko Kovač is a very pragmatic individual, and I think that's kind of what he's pointing out to everybody is, well, when we're doing really well, Maxi says we're going to win the league, and of course Kovač said he wanted to be top of the league last week by winter, so I don't think that's going to happen either. And then Kovac tries to make like little deflection of a joke at the end, which I think is also kind of typical Niko Kovac at this point. So I don't think that there's too much more to make of it, but
Yeah, I think just before Ted talks about the quote, I think we have like the same debate that was in the episode on that original quote on Maxi Bayer, and he was basically, of course, being a young player, being hungry for titles, and of course, that's something the fans always want to hear. So he was basically saying what he aspires as a player and what the fans want as well. So that's kind of like a great quote. Like, of course, probably not the most realistic quote, but it's football. Like, it's emotional. Like, we don't always have to be too realistic or too rational about the sport. Like we can be more emotional and allow ourselves to dream and hope for like better things. But yeah, I don't usually like when managers like really cut off their players like that in on public interviews. And I criticized that Kovac originally. I thought Max Bayer was just being a young guy. He didn't need to say like we need to set our bar lower. We can just say, well, of course we aspire to be champions, but it's going to take a little bit of a process because Bayern Munich and other teams are already more established than us, and I'm just starting a project here at Borussia Dortmund. I just arrived last season, so I mean he was maybe a little bit too rough on Maxi. I think that's what I meant, and this quote also doesn't help, especially based on his performance as a manager in this match, particularly. But what about you, Ted? What do you think about the contrast between those two quotes?
Yeah, I mean, just a friendly reminder to all of us that we're all playing for second place this season by the look of it. Like it's really just a battle of the five of us who are going to duke it out for the Champions League spots. I think Bayern, let's be honest, has probably wrapped it up already at this point with Harry Kane's pace and the way that company's got them clicking. But if I'm you guys in your shoes, I think it's awesome that a guy like Maxi Bayer at 23, like that's the reason he wants to come to a club like Dortmund is, he feels like the move from Hoffenheim up the ladder is an opportunity to compete for the league. And, in any other season, maybe he's right about that. So awesome to have like a young, hungry buck like that on your team. I'll agree with you, Pedro. I think it's kind of BS for him to, for Kovac to pour cold water on it. But Kovac is a dude who's been around the block. He's won things before. So, he gets it. But I think he's got to find the balance between keeping those young guys hungry and keeping expectations realistic.
Yeah, I think Ted said everything, and Joy as well. I think Kovac was a little bit too rough on that, and yeah, of course, Maxi's gonna say things like that. He's frustrated after a match, especially after the final result. But yeah, I think we can move on to a final quote here from Deniz Undav, and of course, I think I already talked about too much about Undav and Stuttgart's front line. But I'm just gonna say the quote real quick here for the Stuttgart fans hearing us. Deniz Undav said, "I have no words for it. Scoring 3 goals against Dortmund doesn't happen every week. I couldn't have gone any better. Everybody was saying I'm not a striker. I'm not a striker. I'm not a striker. He was burning in me, or he was just feeling too angry about it. He wanted to prove everyone wrong. And I think I'm just gonna go ask Teddy, what do you think about that quote? Like that criticism that Undav was getting for allegedly not being a striker. And I think this kind of performance from Stuttgart also talks about the pattern for the season, like having a good possession side but struggling on those final moments to score. I even have a quick stat for you guys here. Stuttgart had an average possession in the Bundesliga season of 58.9%. So it's a good average for a possession side, but only created 1.82 XG per game in average this season. So I want to just give it to Ted. What do you think about this quote, and how can Jonas try to overcome those struggles to create better chances and score more goals, like consequently?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where the quotes came from. I had heard some of them before the match as well, and that people were down on Dennison. I don't know if that's, I'd hate to think it's coming from within our own fan base, though I wouldn't put it past people. I don't know if it's maybe coming from the national team where he had some chances and was getting called up, but never really got off the bench in a meaningful way. So maybe it's kind of around that. But, up until 2-3 weeks ago, he was not a striker in form. But that's the only position the dude plays. So I don't know what people expect of him other than for him to score goals. But it's worth bearing in mind he was dealing with a lot of serious injuries. Didn't play much meaningful football at the beginning of the season. So I think he's been playing in line with expectations. I'll out myself as a Bengals fan when I'm watching American football, and I'm not expecting Joe Burrow when he starts on Thanksgiving Day to come in and start dropping dimes suddenly. It's going to take a little while to work back into form, and hopefully he gets there. And that's all we can expect of Dennis. And on the broader perspective, tactically, Stuttgart, Honus definitely it's possession ball playing out from the back. That's, we've gone from being a counter-attacking team under Matarazzo and some of the other managers to a team that wants to have the ball at our feet, and that's how we want to hurt you. But it's hard to hurt people when you don't have enough healthy strikers and you're playing in 3 competitions. Not only is Dennis coming back from injury, but Dennis basically went from playing no football to playing an absurd amount immediately. So I think the fire hose just immediately got turned on for the guy. And he's responded in the best possible way. So we need him to keep playing like this, and we need to get Ermedin Demirovic back healthy as well, because I don't know that this is sustainable without a second true striker on the team. We can't do it all on Dennis's back, but I hope he proves me wrong like he did on Saturday.
All right, so it is just me now, Joey, because the internet gods have decided that they don't want us to finish this podcast. But you heard most of it, and thank you to Ted for joining Pedro and I. So I guess I could just give you my star and dud of the week since I'm the only one left, and might as well keep on ranting, right? So if I had to choose a star of the week, gotta go with Maxi Bayer because he got the goal, got the assist, and he just keeps on doing whatever is asked of him, and I have to respect that. Guy is played out of position frequently. We know that his preferred position is as a striker. He likes being in that number 9, but Kovač, for whatever reason, doesn't want to play him as the number 9. Haven't been seeing the front two in a bit, so Maxi's got to adapt, and he's being asked to kind of play this wingback like role, and he does it pretty well. I think he does have a few defensive deficiencies, but I like seeing how hard he works. I hope if he bulks up a little bit, then maybe he won't be wrestled off the ball quite so easily. But he's got a lot of pace moving forward, and we saw that with his quick thinking and that sort of double shot rebound goal that he got, and then set up very nicely with Karim Adeyemi for an assist to Adeyemi's goal. So got to give him mad respect for that. And my dud of the week is, got to go with Niko Kovač, unfortunately. I just think that, much of what I mentioned earlier, I think his tactics in the second half cost Dortmund in the end. I really think that this was a winnable match, especially with a little bit of the luck we got with the penalty in the first half, and with that 2-goal lead. But the tactics in the second half were too timid, and we could not put this match away, could not put it to bed when we really should have. And I just feel like if Kovač could have made some subs a bit sooner, then perhaps we would have. Definitely when Karim Adeyemi came on, his pace changed the game. I think Silva should have come on much sooner for Guirassy, and Chukwuemeka needed to come off sooner too. I just feel like these tactics are starting to get a bit stale, and I really hope that we see something a little bit different tomorrow against Villarreal. But I think that is going to wrap things up for us. Thank you so much for listening to Dortmund Dispatch. Definitely follow us, give us the likes on all the social media. Make sure you give us 5 stars. We really appreciate it. And, go Dortmund and check us out next week, because we'll be back with another episode. Take care, guys, and thank you for listening.
Jadon Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce out. Another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond
Jetzt
compare.
kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von Deniz Undav.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a